It's been weeks since the world fell into madness. The sky turned a depressing grey here in the woods, and the earth beneath my feet began to moan and shudder, almost like it's alive or something. The beasts that I used to hunt around here had become twisted and vicious. The villagers turned on each other like rabid animals, killing and maiming without reason. Half of the travellers on these roads are either deranged or begging for help. In these times, I've turned to what I know best: hunting. It's a dangerous game now, but at least I won't starve like those sad people dying on the roads. Except it's not just animals anymore, it's people. I can hardly tell the difference now. I tracked a stag down but got discovered by other survivors. Well, more like opportunists, raiding a carriage on the side of the road. Their leader, a woman dressed in exotic clothing, ushered me to come towards them and said that I looked like I knew my way around here. I told them I did. And she said, "Welcome to the crew." I joined in with a group of new recruits. They told us our test was coming tomorrow. Well, it's better than being one of those poor souls huddled into their homes, waiting for death to come. Today, the lady said we need to prove we can be valuable to her. We needed to pay for her expertise. Something about that sensor leads me to think that she has more power than she's letting on. The greed in her eyes, that need to take more. I told her I knew of a place to find some valuable items. We'll leave in a few hours and she'll stay back at the camp with the rest of her gang. We set out in the morning. It took us a few hours to cut our way through the roots and vines that blocked our path. I used to hunt these lands with my father before the army forced us off of it. Something about an upcoming battle with something unexplainable. Load of bollocks if you ask me, but we couldn't exactly negotiate with the cannons. We pushed through towards the towers until we stood just outside of them. I was the first to hear the beating of the drums and the first to see the once proud army reduced to an husk of its former self. The vines and roots spread through their face and limbs, overgrown and forgotten. As if, on cue, a row of arbalists appeared and shot at us. I was fortunate that the arrows missed my net. Can't say the same for some of the others. We used a spare torch and some oil to burn the creatures to death. We scoured the corpses for belongings, found some rings, pendants and old war medals. Hopefully the lady will take them. I also found an holy book. Since I'm the only literate one here, no one had any qualms about me taking it. Apparently, this is some big heroic bunch. Sure could use some people like that right about now. We returned to our camp and found it had been wiped out. That damn woman is gone. The camp's supplies are empty and only corpses remain. I saw some wagon tracks heading away from the camp and deeper into the forest. It's nothing good, but it's a path forward. Me and 4 others are all that's left now. But even in these dark times, there are moments of calm. We stumbled upon a clearing in the woods today, and there was a waterfall there. It was like a little piece of paradise in the midst of all this madness. We sat there for a while, just watching the water and trying to forget about our troubles. There aren't enough of us to take from others. Not that I would allow the guys to steal anymore, even if there were, so we had to find other survivors. We found a group and had been hired to escort them to a safe haven. They're willing to pay us well and offered us food, so of course we agreed. It's not often that we get to be the good guys, but in this world, anyone who's not trying to cause harm is a hero. The journey has been treacherous and we've already lost a few survivors to the monsters that roam these lands. We encountered a lumbering giant with an axe. He tried to take the woman's child, but one of our men stepped in. putting himself in harm's way, he took an axe to the shoulder for his heroics. After we took care of the oaf, I checked on the man. He seemed almost happy when he passed on. We made it to safety. It's an inn built on the rims of the farmlands. It's housed by a friendly couple and we'll be able to spend some time here. We're going to help them find some food now. As we were leaving, the survivors thanked us for our help. It was a strange feeling, being thanked for something that we thought we were doing out of self-interest. But it was a good feeling too. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I do know we'll keep on surviving and protect each other. It's all we can do now. Humanity needs to come together. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll be remembered as heroes instead of just bandits.
I can't remember the last time I had more than a couple bites of stale bread for food. One would think living and working in the fields of the landowners would bring food to my mouth, but it seems I was a fool. They insist on stockpiling it. They won't even let us take it to the markets anymore. Said it isn't safe. I grew up in that city. I know it isn't the safest place, but I know those streets like the back of my hand. My stomach growls. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Another earthquake. It's the 4th this week. It's getting closer to the bunkhouse where all the workers, myself included, live. I had to check if any animals were lost. They seemed frightened, but unharmed. The fence for the goats were busted, and I saw tracks where they ran off. I hope Philip is okay. That bloody goat's probably worth more than all our lives put together. The animals seem skittish. The only other time I saw them like this was when we were preparing for the slaughter. So maybe we will get something to eat soon. Food! Food for days, weeks, years! My belly has grown so much! I can't think of anything other than what my next meal is. All thanks to the succulent thing growing from the hole after the earthquake. We gathered around the sinkhole to investigate, and I was the first one brave enough to take a bite of meat. It tastes like my mom's sweet pie, mixed with some fresh picked berries and roast meat, all in one. But the smell. Oh, the smell is the best part. The smell is almost intoxicating, but it tastes 100 times better. Once they saw there was nothing wrong, the rest of the farmhands joined in, and we started to shave off slices of meat to take back to the manor. I can't resist anymore. I must have another bite. It was horrible, what we had to do. But we need food. All the food we can get. The lady of the manor is with child, and she demands more. Our neighbors were hoarding their food, so we took it. We armed ourselves with pitchforks and cleavers, broke down the door, and cut them down to size. It was the first time I've ever killed someone. I keep telling myself that it was for a good cause. We carried the food with us back in wheelbarrows. We'll be stocked for months now. Even better yet, the Lord invited me for a feast in our honor. I will finally be a part of their family. What a joy to be alive in these times!
Storms have been battering the coast for days now. There is a wealth of fresh catches out there just waiting for us, but not many ships are willing to brave those waters now, and even fewer crews with the stones to do it, and I think I know why. Earlier this morning, I talked to some men on the port. Real scholarly looking fellows babbling on about some driftwood or something the tide dredged up from near the pier. They were both academics, it seemed, so they were studying it, and they were worried about the rising tide and strange rock formations. Warned me to stay on land and to not stay out in the fog too long. But that's just the thing. Why would a pair of wealthy men that I hadn't seen before warn me, a fisherman, not to go out into the open water? The answer is simple. They're hoarding the market for themselves. Holding a hostage. They have to be. They want to take our livelihoods away from us. What they're spreading is just a ghost story, and not even a good one. Like that one about the drowned crew a few years back. I'm heading out there in the fog tomorrow morning, and if I see those two degenerates again, I'll beat the piss out of them for thinking they can scare an old dog like me. I'm starting to see what those two meant about it being dangerous out here. Almost crashed into some rocks while I wasn't paying attention. But they weren't just ordinary rocks. I know this water better than the fish themselves, and I'd never seen something like this before. I could barely see them through the fog, but those things were covered in something, like they'd been chiselled out of the very waters themselves. I couldn't make any sense of them, that's for sure, but they were definitely what those two city people were talking about. I felt uneasy near them, and the crew is a superstitious bunch, so we gave it a wide berth. I don't know if I was just imagining things, or if the water was in my ears, but I heard something. I heard a voice talking to me. A deep, gargling voice. It was something like out of a sea shanty. Telling me secrets about the waves, telling me about how everywhere else has gone to shit. The city, the pastures. Apparently everywhere was just as cursed as these blasted waves now. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew it was true. Deep down, as my heart sank with a pool of accursed anchor, I knew that the fog was right. And then all of a sudden I realised something. I was lost. I had no idea where I was, and the fog was just getting thicker and thicker. I could barely see the other end of my boat through it, let alone the port. The dial on my compass spun as if it was possessed. The voice calmed me down though, said everything was going to be alright. It was comforting in a way, but I was probably just imagining things. Yeah, just a case of spending too long in the breath of the sea. Rejoice! Rejoice! For the Mother Ocean has given us a new god! I'm sorry that I ever doubted my beliefs. I humbly apologise for my unspeakable transgressions against our Lord, our Saviour. My heresy in these very pages is a sin I must purge. I must drench in these holy and sacred waters, so that it can never be seen again by Saviour's pelagic eyes. I see it now. I can hear it now, the call of the deep, her song, telling me to return below. What was I even doing away from her embrace? I was always her child, always a son of the deep sea. But I was lost. I'd forgotten who I was at heart, and she sent a herald to remind me. The mighty hand of a new god. It burst from beneath the fathomless depths, and showed me her glorious visage from below. She held me. She held me there until I could no longer cry out. She held me until my lungs were filled with water, and I begged her to stop in my stupefied state. And Mother Ocean, a gracious goddess she is, bestowed upon me her blessing, and answered my prayers. I was reborn, and I was gifted a new life. I was always her child, and she still accepts me, even after my refusal to acknowledge it. Her message has already reached the shoreline. It has reached countless others who now know the truth. And to think I'd rejected her. To think I'd stopped listening to the call of the sea, that wondrous melody. I know better now. Those buffoons, those heretics, who still have deaf ears to her calls, they must be shown the truth. They must return to the sea, in one way or another. These waters are my home now, as they are where we all belong. I shall return to the deep, to be with her, as we all should, as her children. Praise her! Praise the great Leviathan! For she has drawn back and shown me what lies beneath this shroud.
These are truly dark and desperate times. I have worked in this inn since my late father perished 40 years ago, and have never seen a sorrier sight. Scores, no, droves of filthy peasants, salt-soaked fishermen, soot-covered scribes, and broken soldiers pass through my establishment every day. Most bring in whatever meager possessions they own to give up for a loaf of stale bread. A few barter their food for whatever gold or relics I have on hand. Strange that even here, at the end of times, so many cling to their wealth. Not one of them stays the night. I've given up trying to charge people for rooms, for not a single soul occupies them now. The only two faces I see consistently in my establishment are the Wainwright, having taken up his skills to aid those with carts and wagons to make the next leg of their journey, and the guard I hired some years ago. She claimed to have worked for a guild of sorts, training men and women in ways of combat. I'm glad to have her here, as it makes staying less terrifying in the face of what looms outside. Whether it is the rotten fields, barnacled coast, or the distant flames of the nearby city, wherever I look, I see doom and despair all around me. Not to speak of that terrifying, overbearing mountain, as if seeking to swallow us all in its shadow. Whatever caused this ruin is spreading, and fast. I fear that soon my home will meet its end as well. I will not run, and I will not abandon this place, but I am powerless to stop what happens out there. And with every day I awake, I feel the tightness in my chest closing in a little more. Every waking hour is a struggle, and it is only a matter of time before our end. I've had a curious set of customers today. 5 travelers in a stagecoach. Normally, I would not bat an eye at this, but they were heading towards the mountain. I thought it preposterous, until I saw them step out of the coach. These were no meager nobodies, but rather men and women skilled in the way of battle, seeking to carve out a path through the corruption ahead. Dried blood on their weapons and armor being the proof of their capability. 4 of them sat by the hearth and took a moment of respite. I did not see the 5th. They didn't leave the wagon, even as the Wainwright worked on it. I saw only a hand with a purse of money poke through the window. Whomever they were, they proved to be a most generous benefactor, purchasing nearly the entire supply of hard liquor in my stock, along with food and other supplies needed for their journey. They also managed to convince my guard to recall her old craft and help their companions refine their experience in combat. I have no idea how, but I know better than to interfere. After eating and drinking their fill, they turned in for the night and left at whatever constitutes dawn these days. I saw them ride out, glints of the torch on their stagecoach filling me with a sense of longing I've never felt before. I doubt I will ever see them again. They keep coming back. 1 coach, 5 occupants, not too often, but often enough to notice. And every time the same. Leave the coach with the Wainwright, peruse my wares, train with my guard, eat, drink, smoke, play darts, sharpen weapons, repair armor, and more, before turning in for the night and riding out at dawn. Sometimes I recognize the faces from the previous visit. Other times it's a wholly different set of 4 warriors leaving the stagecoach, all heading into the places that fell to madness. All heading towards that accursed mountain. How do they do it? Why do they do it? Nothing but death and ruin there. What is so important, so imperative to their goals that they are ready to face certain doom for it? I shudder to even think about it. Yet, one thing I know for certain, their repeated visits have filled me with vigor, with energy to keep my establishment running, to keep bartering with the haggard survivors escaping this madness, to stockpile goods for their next visitation. For their arrival is a breath of fresh air, piercing the stench of loathing around us. I understand now. I understand why I wait for their arrival. I understand why I offer them my services. I understand it all. It is in that torch on the back of their coach. It is special. Warmer than the most roaring flame in my hearth. Brighter than any light. Second only to what I remember of the sun. For I have not glimpsed it in a long time. That is how they pierce the darkness ahead. That is how they have the will to fight. That is why they seek to reach that mountain. Whatever brought upon this ruin lies there, and thus they ride there to bring an end to it. That flame passing through is what kept my home from falling to the same fate as every other place. It is that flame riding out at dawn that filled my heart with hope for its next arrival. And it is that flame shining through the loathing that showed me my new purpose in these times. I must keep my inn running in this desperate hour of need. I must keep procuring supplies from travelers seeking to escape this crisis. I must keep giving shelter and aid to these brave souls carrying the torch, for this work is my part to ensure they are ready for whatever lies at the end of their journey. Because the fate of the world as we once knew it hangs upon their success or failure.
It's been 3 weeks since my wife, Amelia, and I were forced to flee our home. We finally found safety at an inn near the edge of the city. I write this on singed papers collected from the now burning streets. I want to make sure people know what happened and what we saw. That night, we heard a commotion outside. I thought it was a fight at the tavern or another escaped convict, but no. I saw the entire street on fire, as men and women fought each other with primal rage, their skin melting like wax from a candle. As the world began to burn around us, the incessant screeching and chanting of those apostates, those fanatics, still rings through my ears. With my daughter Anne in my arms, Amelia and I fled from our burning cottage as an enormous fanatic, skin red, eyes burned away, and a gritted maw rampaged through our home. We may have lost our home, but we were still the fortunate ones. Ruin surrounded us. We watched in horror as our neighbors, Ezekiel and Henrietta, were dragged from the rubble of their once simple home. I could do nothing but hold Anne and Amelia in my arms as we hid in the stone sewers. I'll never forget Ezekiel's cries as they drove their hooks through him. Most of the fanatics' limbs were removed and crudely replaced with prosthetics of metal. Hooks, whips, bombs from the city's garrisons. All these melted and infused instruments attached to the writhing and melted bodies of these monsters. Ezekiel went first. They lifted him by the embedded hooks in his chest. His entrails poured across the ground, and his cries were lost in the blazing inferno of our once beautiful city. He hung there, below the bridge leading towards the rubble of his home. Henrietta would be spared such a ghastly fate, only to be brought to whom the heretics called her ladyship herself. A tall woman, burned and severed arms of her kin hung from her waist. Her face was covered in a dirty white hood, with a red circle donning the crown of her head. Chains hung loosely from her wrists, attached to the bottom of her blackened cuirass. Only a crimson mouth, with bloody black teeth, could be seen below her hood. She seemed to almost smile, if I could even call it that, as the fanatics drug Henrietta before her. She leaned down to cusp Henrietta's face in her hand, almost motherly, I thought. Henrietta's pleas for life seemed to subside briefly as I saw her ladyship drag her finger across what I believed to be Henrietta's mouth. Her ladyship placed her smouldering hands on the side of Henrietta's face as I heard what sounded like a muffled scream behind the door. Henrietta's face began to bubble as the fanatic leader's hands engulfed in flames. No tears fell. They evaporated, along with her eyes. I clutched Amelia and Anne in my arms as I prayed to light for our safety. And if not, I only hoped it would be quick. Her ladyship and her fanatics left Henrietta's charred body in the middle of the street as they moved deeper into the city. The great library looming in the distance. I could not bear to look at that burning pyre of damnation. Everywhere we went, fire and rubble as far as the eye could see stretched before us. We ducked through putrid alleyways and burning parks to escape the fanatics' grasp, but we encountered another group. Men and women garbed in red cloth were rifling through the remnants of burnt homes and shops. Hoods were pulled over most of their faces as their hounds kept a close watch on the neighbouring side streets. As we hid in a far-off alley, an olive-skinned woman with beads and jewellery hanging from her neck and a red bandana pulled tightly across her face led the ruffians through the crumbling city. She was holding a peculiar, censer-like object as smoke billowed from the demonic face that served as its opening. Gold trinkets and baubles, these things were snatched from the burning display cases and homes as the group made their way through. We moved through the alleyway and ran down the city's high street as we came upon a wondrous sight. People. A dishevelled carriage with about half a dozen citizens was parked on the side of the street. I recognised a few of them from around the marketplace as we approached them. An elderly man with a balding head and sunken but kind eyes was beckoning us over. He gave the three of us cups of water and scraps of bread as a rumbling sound came down the high street. A carriage, led by two large war horses, was smashing through debris and charred remains as it approached us. Boxes, equipment and luggage were haphazardly strapped to the mobile fortress as it came to stop before the group of survivors. The carriage door opened, revealing 4 individuals before us. An old grizzled man, adorned in heavy armour, a sergeant or some sort of military station with a bloodied shield and a gore-covered maw. Another man, younger, with dark hair and blackened eyes, with a red cowl brought up to his nose. A pistol hung lazily about his grip as a sharpened dagger was sheathed in his belt. A Sister of the Light, adorned with plate armour, wielding a mace and a large tome chained to her waist. And finally, a most peculiar sight, a court jester, with blades and daggers strapped along his body. He was humming a haunting tune as he walked before us. There was muttering from this ragged band, some positioned into taking from us the little we had, including the stale bread resting in my limp, burned fingers. But the younger man with black hair looked to me and reached for the side with his sheathed dagger. I moved in front of Amelia and Anne as he unsheathed a bag with a few coins and treasures within it. He then asked for directions for the road ahead. I gave the best information I could in my stupefied state. The four seemed to nod in mutual agreement and loaded back into their carriage. We all watched in disbelief as the pair of horses thundered them down the high street, heading towards the great library. The bag of loose gold and baubles laid quietly in my hand. We used the gold to pay a group of mercenaries for protection to the local inn. There are still heroes out there, surviving, fighting back this madness. I have found my resolve, and I will keep my family safe in these dark days and offer what assistance I can to other survivors. Even now, as the darkness shrouds the world, I still feel a semblance of hope.